Welcome back to Euro Football Daily. While La Liga and Serie A are now set to complete their seasons, this campaign has been seriously disrupted for almost all clubs, with some missing out on trophies as a result. In light of this, let's take a look at 10 teams who missed out on glory for reasons out of their control. 10 and 9. Ajax and AZ Alkmaar. When the global health crisis struck Europe in February 2020, football leagues across the continent were faced with having to make swift and bold decisions based on the safety of players, staff and fans. By the middle of March, most leagues had been postponed, and then came the big question: what happens next? At the time of writing, some leagues are waiting to restart, some have been cancelled altogether, and some clubs are still awaiting their fate, whether that be for a Champions Medal, European places, promotion or relegation. The Royal Netherlands Football Association were one of the quickest federations to decide a final resolution, announcing the cancellation of the Eredivisie at the end of April. But unlike the Belgian and French leagues, where Club Brugge and PSG were awarded the title having amassed near unassailable leads, the Dutch top flight was voided entirely, meaning no relegation and no champion. And the fact there is no champion is probably just as well. When league play was suspended, Ajax and AZ Alkmaar were level on points at the top after 29 games played each, with the Amsterdam club better off on goal difference, making it too close to call even if the season was decided on a points per game basis. The decision means Ajax miss out on a second successive title, but Alkmaar fans were particularly disappointed, as their club was pursuing just their third Eredivisie crown. Their last triumph came back in 2009 under Louis van Gaal, and they fancied their chances, with a pivotal win at the Amsterdam Arena 2 weeks before the suspension, giving them momentum in the title race. It marks the first time since 1945 that the Netherlands has been without a football champion. 8. SC Cambuur. However, arguably the biggest losers are Cambuur and De Graafschap in the Dutch second tier, who were both set for promotion from the Eerste Divisie, having lost just 6 games between them all campaign. Cambuur were having a particularly impressive season, winning 21 of their 29 matches, scoring over 2 goals a game and holding on to the top spot from game week 10. But the KNVB's decision to cancel the campaign blocked any chance of promotion. 11 points clear of third place with 9 games left to play, Cambuur were almost certainly due a return to the Eredivisie 4 years after being relegated from the top flight, powered by the prolific form of veteran striker Robert Muren and impressive displays from youngsters like Jamie Jacobs. The decision not to grant Cambuur or De Graafschap promotion has understandably not gone down well, with both clubs taking the Dutch footballing authorities to court over the matter. Unfortunately, their case was unsuccessful. 7. Everton. Okay, so this example doesn't involve a club having a title that otherwise belonged to them taken away, but a rampant Everton side were denied the opportunity to battle for European glory in the mid-1980s. Under legendary coach Howard Kendall, the Toffees dominated the English top flight in the 84-85 campaign, finishing with an impressive 90 points, a staggering 13 points ahead of second place Liverpool, denying their arch rivals a record 4th consecutive league crown in the process. They also came within touching distance of recording a famous treble, beating Bayern Munich and Rapid Vienna on the way to winning the European Cup Winners' Cup, and losing to Man United after extra time in the FA Cup final. Put simply, Everton were among the continent's top club sides at this point, and yet were unable to contest the next season's European Cup due to the blanket ban on English clubs following the Heysel Stadium disaster, which took the lives of 39 fans at that year's final between Liverpool and Juventus. They would have been a hot favourite too. Gary Lineker signed for the club that summer and would enjoy the most prolific season of his career at Goodison Park, netting 38 times in 52 games as Kendall's side lost out on the title by a single point. The following season he would transfer to Barcelona, who had just lost to Steaua Bucharest in the 1986 European Cup final. Who knows what the English striker could have achieved on Merseyside if his team had the opportunity to be there. 6. Rangers. Perhaps the most contentious entry on this list, Rangers are hardly in need of titles. Despite rival Celtic winning the last 9 Scottish premierships, they still hold 3 more league crowns than them with 54, which is in fact a world record. However, in 2017, fans of the Teddy Bears launched a petition to have the 7 titles won by the club during the Second World War officially recognised, with the main gripe seemingly being the fact Celtic had been awarded their titles during World War I. But despite nearly 25,000 fans signing the petition, their complaints unsurprisingly fell on deaf ears. While their arch-rivals coincidentally enjoyed a period of dominance during the First World War, Scottish football carried on largely as normal in this time, whereas the gravity of World War II meant official competition had to be suspended between 1939 and 1946, and the league was split into 2 unofficial regional championships in which Rangers reigned supreme. Funnily enough, this came during a relatively quiet era for Celtic, who won just 2 titles between 1926 and 1953. With the boys now catching up with the Gers record, some of the Ibrox faithful are clearly keen to hold up their lead by any means necessary, and the decision to hand Celtic the title after the cancellation of the 1920 season will no doubt have made them even more irate. 5. Piacenza. We've spoken about Calciopoli countless times on this channel, but while the match-fixing scandal saw Juventus stripped of 2 Serie A titles, it's easy to forget the collateral damage that was caused to other clubs. Juve were of course demoted to the 2nd tier as a result, but were able to keep hold of Gianluigi Buffon, Alessandro Del Piero, Pavel Nedved and David Trezeguet, while young stars like Giorgio Chiellini and Claudio Marchisio were breaking into the first team. What's more, the Bianconeri had an initial 30-point deduction reduced to just 9 points, giving them a far bigger chance to bounce straight back up to the top flight. And they did so, finishing first, losing just 4 of their 42 games, and recording a goal difference more than double next best Genoa. But there were of course losers in this. Had Juve not been implicated in the scandal, Messina would have been relegated instead, but after their lucky break, finished bottom of Serie A in 2006-07 anyway. If the Sicilian minnows had gone down instead of Juve, or the 30-point punishment was upheld, it's likely Piacenza would have made it to the promotion spots. They enjoyed an impressive campaign, finishing in 4th, a big improvement on their 11th place finish the previous campaign, but their efforts went unrewarded in the face of Italy's most successful side running riot in the division. Having suffered this misfortune, Piacenza would end up getting relegated from Serie B 4 years later and were declared bankrupt in 2012. 4. The Netherlands. Widely regarded as the greatest footballing nation to never win a World Cup, the Netherlands have lost in 3 finals, and while they were narrowly beaten in 1974 and 2010, their defeat to Argentina in 1978 is perhaps the most painful. Unlike others on this list, the Oranje did lose out on sporting merit, but they were without talismanic captain Johan Cruyff, who missed the entire tournament following a traumatic episode. Just months earlier, the Barcelona legend had his house broken into, and he and his family were tied up at gunpoint in an attempted kidnap. Not only did it force him to decide against travelling to the tournament with his country, but it was also a reason behind him leaving Barca that summer and effectively ending his career at the top level. In fact, he came close to retiring altogether before moving to play in the USA instead. Cruyff only revealed all of this 30 years later in 2008, showing just how big an effect the incident had on him. Clearly, there was no way he could have played at the 1978 World Cup, and Netherlands fans will rightly feel aggrieved they were denied his magic in a tightly contested final. 3. Haras El Hodood. In February 2012, one of the most horrific tragedies in modern football history occurred at the Port Said Stadium, following a match between Egyptian giants Al Masry and Al Ahly. After watching their team win, Masry fans stormed the pitch, attacking opposition players and fans who fled but were unable to leave the stadium. A total of 74 people were killed in the riot, which sparked protests across the country. As a result, the league was suspended and eventually called off entirely the following month, leaving Egypt to mourn those who died in the disaster. But the cancellation also meant that one club was denied a chance at their first ever title. Haras El Hodood, a club from Alexandria with almost 0 silverware to its name, stood top of the table with just 1 loss and a game in hand when the league was called off. They never came close again and were relegated to the 2nd tier in 2016. 2. Yugoslavia. Winners of the 1987 World Youth Championship and quarter-finalists at the World Cup in Italy 3 years later, Yugoslavia witnessed an emerging golden generation in the late 80s. Stars like Robert Podolski, Dejan Savicevic and Davor Šuker were among Europe's top young players, and looked like helping a national side which hadn't reached the final of an international tournament since the 1960s get back to the top. But with the outbreak of civil war in the early 90s, the opportunity never came, as United Nations sanctions saw the national side denied their place at Euro 92, with eventual surprise winners Denmark brought in as a wild card in their place. Had they been there, Yugoslavia would surely have been a hot favourite. With the nation disintegrating, they were also unable to compete at the World Cup in 1994, where unfancied outfits in Sweden and Bulgaria made the semi-finals. During this time, Red Star Belgrade won the European Cup, Savicevic lifted the Champions League with Milan, and Šuker joined Real Madrid before starring for newly formed Croatia at the '98 World Cup, finishing top scorer ahead of Ronaldo and Batistuta. And with such a wealth of world-class talent coming out of the Balkan states since, it's hard to imagine that a side containing the best players from Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia and Bosnia, among other former Yugoslav nations, wouldn't have tasted glory at some stage in the last 30 years. 1. Lazio. With the 2019-20 Serie A season set to recommence at the end of June, Lazio will have the chance to win their first league title in 20 years. At the time of recording, they sit just 1 point behind leaders Juventus, with the best defence and goal difference in the division. But fans of the Roman club would have been forgiven for thinking the league's suspension this year was written in the stars. The last time a Serie A season was suspended midway through the campaign was following the outbreak of the First World War back in 1915. With the competition in a different format in those days, Lazio was the only side to have qualified for the final stage when the season was called off. However, years later, when a winner was eventually decided, Genoa, a more historically successful side from the more affluent north of the country, were instead awarded the title. It was a kick in the teeth for a side which had finished runners-up in 1913 and 1914, and Lazio would have to wait until 1974 for their first Scudetto. Campaigns to have the club recognised as the 1915 champions have gathered pace in recent years, showing just how big this issue remains for many of the fans. But if Simone Inzaghi's side can overcome Juve, some will no doubt consider the curse to be lifted. So those were our 10 teams that were denied the title, but what did you make of it? Any more suggestions? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, why not click on screen right now, as there's plenty where this came from, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for more great content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.